The interstellar prison station Iron Vault floated in the dead space between star systems. It wasn't the kind of place anyone wanted to visit, let alone work. The station held the galaxy's worst nightmares, creatures who'd committed crimes so terrible that entire planets demanded they be locked away forever. But even among these monsters, one stood apart. Cell Block 7 was different from the rest of the prison. The corridor leading to it was always empty. No guards patrolled there. No maintenance workers went to fix broken lights. Even the cleaning robots seemed to malfunction whenever they got close. The entire section ran on automated systems because nobody, and I mean nobody, was brave enough to go near what lived inside. His name was Draxus. The other prisoners whispered about him in terrified voices. Some said he'd burned entire cities with his breath. Others claimed he'd torn apart warships with his bare claws. The official record said he destroyed 3 civilized worlds, killing billions. Every species in the galaxy knew his name and feared it. Through the reinforced observation window, you could see him sometimes. A massive creature covered in dark crimson scales that looked like they could deflect plasma fire. His wings, even folded, scraped the ceiling of his enormous cell. Horns curved from his skull like twisted black metal. His eyes glowed with an inner fire that never seemed to dim. And he was always angry. Every single day, Draxus would rage against his prison. He'd slam his body against the energy barriers until the whole station shook. His roars echoed through the corridors, making seasoned soldiers jump in fear. Alarms would blare. The barriers would flare bright blue as they absorbed the impact of his fury. Then he'd retreat to the shadows and wait, gathering strength to attack again. The station commander had tried everything. Sedatives didn't work, draconian biology was too different. Negotiation was impossible because Draxus refused to speak. Punishment only made him more violent. After 5 years, they'd given up and just let the automated systems handle him. 15 years he'd been there. 15 years of pure rage. That's when humanity showed up. Humans were the newest species to join the Galactic Coalition, and honestly, most aliens thought they were weird. Too emotional. Too stubborn. Too willing to question rules that everyone else just accepted. But they were also surprisingly good at understanding different species, so the Coalition started sending human psychologists to various stations. Dr. Kate Morrison got assigned to Iron Vault. She was a specialist in xenopsychology. Basically, she tried to figure out how alien minds worked. She'd studied the files on every prisoner, looking for rehabilitation potential. Most cases were hopeless, but she believed everyone deserved to be evaluated properly. Kate had one problem though. She was a single mother, and her 6-year-old daughter Lily had nowhere else to go. Taking a kid to a maximum security prison wasn't ideal, but Kate didn't have family back on Earth who could help. The station commander wasn't happy about it, but he eventually agreed, as long as Lily stayed in the family quarters and followed the rules. The commander pulled Kate aside on her first day. "Dr. Morrison, I need to be crystal clear about something. Your daughter can explore the recreational areas, she can visit the observation decks, she can even watch the low-security prisoners during exercise time. But under no circumstances does she go near Cell Block 7. That creature in there is the most dangerous being we've ever housed. Do you understand?" Kate nodded. "I'll make sure she knows. But here's the thing about 6-year-olds, they're curious. Especially smart, adventurous ones like Lily. For the first week, everything went fine. Lily stayed in the family quarters, colored pictures, and watched educational programs about space. But she got bored. The station was huge, and while her mom worked long shifts, Lily was stuck with a babysitting robot that was about as fun as watching paint dry. So one day, while the robot was charging, Lily decided to explore. The station security was designed to stop adult prisoners and prevent break-ins from outside. Nobody had really thought about a small child wandering around from the inside. Lily was tiny enough to slip through gaps, quick enough to dodge automated sensors, and clever enough to follow the maintenance tunnels that weren't monitored as carefully. She ended up in a corridor she'd never seen before. It was darker than the rest of the station. Colder too. The lights flickered, and there was this low humming sound that made her nervous. But Lily had inherited her mother's stubbornness. She kept walking until she reached a massive door marked with warnings in a dozen alien languages. She couldn't read most of them, but she understood the symbols. Danger. Keep out. Authorized personnel only. There was an observation window built into the wall next to the door. Lily had to stand on her tiptoes to see through it. That's when she saw him. Draxus was even bigger than she'd imagined anything could be. He was pacing back and forth in his cell like a caged tiger, his tail lashing behind him. His scales caught the dim light and seemed to glow. Every step he took made a sound like thunder. Then he stopped. He turned toward the window. His glowing eyes locked onto hers. Lily should have been terrified. Any rational person would have run screaming. But she didn't see a monster. She saw something else entirely. She saw someone who looked incredibly, desperately sad. "You look lonely," she said quietly, pressing her small hand against the glass. Draxus stared at her. He didn't move. Didn't roar. For the first time in 15 years, he was completely still. Draxus moved closer to the observation window. Each step was slow, careful, like he was approaching something fragile that might break. His massive clawed feet made barely a sound. He lowered his enormous head until one glowing eye was level with the small human child on the other side of the glass. They stared at each other for what felt like forever. Lily wasn't scared. She tilted her head, studying him with the innocent curiosity only children have. "Do you have a name?" she asked. The translator system built into the cell crackled to life. It had been offline for years because Draxus never spoke. But now, a deep rumbling voice came through, translated into English. "Draxus." "I'm Lily," she said brightly. "I'm 6 years old. How old are you?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he asked, "Why are you here, small one? This place is not safe for younglings." Lily shrugged. "My mom works here. She talks to prisoners and tries to help them. I got bored waiting for her." She looked around his cell. "Your room is really big but it looks empty. Don't you have any toys or books or anything?" Something that might have been a laugh rumbled from Draxus's chest. "I am a prisoner, not a guest." "That's sad," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Everyone should have something fun, even in timeout. When I'm in timeout at home, I still get my stuffed animals." Before Draxus could respond, security alarms started blaring. The automated systems had finally detected an unauthorized person in cell block 7. Heavy boots thundered down the corridor. Guards burst through the doors, weapons drawn, expecting the worst. They found Lily standing calmly at the observation window, waving goodbye to the dragon behind the glass. The guards pulled her away immediately. She protested, saying she was just talking, that Draxus was nice actually, but they didn't listen. Within minutes, Kate came running, her face pale with terror. "Lily. Oh my God, are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Kate grabbed her daughter, checking her for injuries. "Mom, I'm fine. He didn't do anything bad. We just talked. He seems really lonely." The station commander was furious. He wanted Kate and Lily removed from Iron Vault immediately. But Kate, after her initial panic faded, noticed something interesting in the security footage. Draxus hadn't attacked. Hadn't even threatened. He just talked. To a child. Calmly. This was the same creature who'd tried to break through his barriers every single day for 15 years. Kate made a decision that every other psychologist told her was insane. She requested permission to study the interaction further. The commander refused. She pushed harder, citing coalition research protocols and prisoner rights. Eventually, after days of arguments, she got approval for supervised observation sessions. The next time Lily approached cell block 7, Kate was with her. Guards lined the corridor, weapons ready. Every sensor was active. One wrong move and they'd flood the cell with suppression fields. Lily walked right up to the window like she was visiting a friend. "Hi Draxus. I brought my mom. She's really smart and nice. And I brought you something." She held up a drawing she'd made, a crayon picture of a large red dragon and a small stick-figure girl standing together under a yellow sun. Draxus approached the barrier again. He stared at the drawing for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter than before. "No one has given me a gift in a very long time." There was a small containment transfer chamber built into the cell for delivering food and supplies. Lily carefully placed the drawing inside. The automated system scanned it for weapons or contraband, found nothing dangerous, and allowed it through. Draxus picked up the paper with surprising gentleness. His claws could have shredded steel, but he held the drawing like it was made of butterfly wings. He studied it carefully, then looked at Lily. "Thank you, small one. I will treasure this." From that day forward, something changed. Lily started visiting regularly, always with Kate present and guards nearby. She'd talk about her day, tell him stories she'd learned in school, show him more drawings. Draxus would listen patiently, occasionally asking questions or offering observations. Kate noticed that on days when Lily visited, Draxus didn't attack his barriers. His rage seemed to simply disappear. She started documenting everything, recording their conversations, analyzing his behavior patterns. One day, about 3 weeks into the visits, Lily was telling Draxus about a story she'd watched about a princess and a dragon. And then the dragon protected the princess because they were friends, she said. Do you think dragons can be friends with humans? I believe anything is possible, Lily, Draxus replied. She was quiet for a moment, then said something that made every guard in the corridor tense up. My real dad left before I was born. Mom says he wasn't ready to be a parent. But you always listen to me and answer my questions and you're nice. Can I call you Dad? Kate held her breath. The guards gripped their weapons tighter. This was crossing a line nobody had anticipated. Draxus was silent for so long that Lily thought maybe she'd said something wrong. Then his voice came through the translator, rougher than usual, like he was struggling with emotion. I would be honored, little one. Though I am not worthy of such a title. Why not? Lily asked innocently. Because I have done terrible things. I have caused great suffering. I am a monster. Lily pressed both hands against the glass. You're not a monster to me. Monsters are mean. You're nice. You're my dad. Something broke in Draxus that day. Kate saw it happen. This massive creature who'd been full of rage for 15 years suddenly looked vulnerable. Lost. Like he didn't know how to process kindness after so long without it. The other prisoners started noticing changes too. Draxus stopped his violent outbursts entirely. He began requesting books through the station library system, children's books, so he could discuss them with Lily. He asked for art supplies and started creating surprisingly delicate sculptures from the materials they allowed him, gifts for his adopted daughter. The galaxy's most feared monster was learning to be a father. But Kate's professional curiosity was growing too. She started reviewing Draxus's case files more carefully. Something didn't add up. The official record said he destroyed 3 worlds in acts of unprovoked aggression. But the more she dug, the more holes she found in the story. Transcripts were missing. Witness testimonies seemed coached. Key evidence had been sealed under Coalition security protocols she didn't have clearance to access. Kate was a psychologist, not an investigator, but she was also a mother. And she'd seen how gentle Draxus was with Lily, how patient, how kind. That didn't match with someone who'd murdered billions for no reason. She made a decision that would change everything. She was going to find out the truth about what really happened, no matter what it cost her. Kate started her investigation quietly. She couldn't access the sealed files directly, her clearance level wasn't high enough. But she was smart, and she knew how bureaucracies worked. There were always gaps, always people who knew more than they were supposed to. She started with the station's records keeper, an elderly Zenthri named Quilmex who'd worked at Iron Vault since it opened. Over coffee, or whatever the Zenthri equivalent was, she casually asked about the oldest cases, the ones from before the current digital system. Draxus. Quilmex's antennae twitched nervously. That case is complicated. I was here when they brought him in. Lots of strange circumstances around it. Files kept disappearing. Orders came from very high up to stop asking questions. What kind of questions? Kate asked. Quilmex looked around to make sure they were alone. Like why a corporation called Nexum Mining had their lawyers at the sentencing hearing. Like why certain coalition officials suddenly got very wealthy right after his trial. Like why all the surviving witnesses from his people refused to testify against him. Kate's heart raced. Do you have any of the original documentation? Officially? No. Everything's sealed. Quilmex paused. But I may have kept personal backup copies. Old habit from my military days. Never know when records might mysteriously vanish. He slipped her a data chip. Be careful with this, Dr. Morrison. People who dug into this case before had unfortunate accidents. I'm old and retiring soon, so I don't care anymore. But you have a daughter. Think hard before you go down this path. That night, after Lily was asleep, Kate reviewed the files. What she found made her blood run cold. Draxus's species, the Draconians, had lived on a mineral-rich planet called Vescara. Nexum Mining wanted those minerals. They'd offered to buy mining rights, but the Draconians refused. The minerals were sacred to their culture, tied to their religious beliefs and traditional way of life. So Nexum found a loophole. They claimed an ancient treaty gave them extraction rights. The coalition backed them up, despite draconian protests. The mining began. It was brutal. Nexum didn't care about environmental protections or cultural sites. They stripped the land bare. When Draconians protested, Nexum hired security forces to maintain order. Peaceful demonstrations were met with violence. Draxus had been a teacher, not a warrior. A scholar who studied ancient history and taught younglings. But when Nexum's mining caused toxic contamination that started killing draconian children, something in him snapped. He'd organized resistance. Not random attacks, carefully planned strikes against Nexum facilities. The files showed he'd always issued evacuation warnings first. He'd targeted equipment and infrastructure, not people. He was trying to make the mining unprofitable, to force Nexum to leave. Then came the disaster that sealed his fate. A Nexum mining station had a reactor malfunction. Draxus had discovered the problem through resistance intelligence. The company had been ignoring safety violations for months to save money. He'd sent warnings to Nexum, to the Coalition, to anyone who would listen. The reactor was going to explode, and it would take out a nearby settlement. Nexum ignored the warnings. They said Draxus was lying, trying to disrupt their operations. Draxus tried to evacuate the area himself. He and other Draconians got thousands of people out. But they ran out of time. The reactor exploded, killing over 50,000 people in the settlement and the surrounding area. Nexum immediately blamed Draxus. They said he'd sabotaged the reactor. The Coalition, already financially tied to Nexum through various deals, accepted this version without serious investigation. Draxus was labeled a terrorist and mass murderer. The 3 worlds he'd supposedly destroyed? Mining stations and corporate facilities. The billions dead? Corporate accounting that counted projected future profits as lives lost. Kate sat back, stunned. Draxus wasn't a monster. He was a desperate father trying to save his people from corporate genocide. And the Coalition had helped cover it up. She knew what she had to do, but Quilmex's warning echoed in her mind. This information could get her killed. She made copies of everything and sent them to trusted contacts on Earth, with instructions to release them if anything happened to her. Then she started drafting an official petition for case review. That's when things started going wrong. The first incident seemed like coincidence. A maintenance bot malfunctioned near Lily's school area, nearly crushing her before a quick-thinking guard pulled her away. Kate's heart nearly stopped, but the station commander assured her it was just bad luck, old equipment. The second incident was harder to dismiss. Kate's personal terminal was hacked, and all her research files were deleted. The station's IT department said it was a virus, nothing personal. But Kate knew better. The third incident made it crystal clear. She received an anonymous message on her personal communicator: "Stop investigating. Your daughter is very precious. It would be tragic if something happened to her." Kate was terrified, but she was also furious. She went straight to the station commander with everything: the files, the threats, all of it. He listened carefully, his expression growing darker. "Dr. Morrison, I believe you. I've always thought there was something wrong about the Draxus case. But you need to understand, Nexum Mining might be officially defunct, but the people who ran it are still powerful. They have connections throughout the Coalition. If you push this, they'll push back harder. So what am I supposed to do? Let an innocent being rot in prison? Ignore death threats against my daughter?" "No," the commander said firmly. "You're going to let me handle security while you continue your work. And I'm going to have a conversation with some old military friends who don't like corrupt politicians." Meanwhile, something was happening that none of them knew about. The people threatening Kate had decided that warnings weren't enough. They'd arranged for a tragic accident that would eliminate the problem permanently. A systems failure in the family quarters section, catastrophic but explainable. Plasma conduits would overload, causing an explosion. Dr. Morrison and her daughter would die, along with a few others for believability. Unfortunate, but necessary. The sabotage was already in place. In 6 hours, during the station's night cycle when most people were asleep, the conduits would fail. But they'd made one critical mistake in their planning. They'd forgotten that Cell Block 7 was on the same power grid as the family quarters. And they'd forgotten that Draxus, despite being locked away for 15 years, was still a Draconian, a species with senses far beyond human capabilities. 4 hours before the scheduled explosion, Draxus was resting in his cell when he felt it. A vibration in the station structure that wasn't right. A subtle heat signature building where it shouldn't. His predator instincts, dormant for so long, suddenly screamed danger. He went to the observation window. No guards were nearby, it was night cycle, and most of the station was asleep. He could trigger an alarm, but the automated systems would just interpret it as another attack, lock down his cell further, and ignore him. Unless he made them impossible to ignore. Draxus took a deep breath and did something he hadn't done in months, not since Lily came into his life. He attacked his barriers with everything he had. The entire station shook. Alarms blared throughout every corridor. Emergency lights flooded cell block 7. The impact of Draxus throwing his full weight against the energy barriers registered on sensors throughout Iron Vault. Guards came running, weapons ready, expecting the worst. They found Draxus roaring words through the translator system: "Evacuate family quarters. Plasma conduit failure. Get them out now." Most guards thought he was just being violent again. But a few, the ones who'd watched him with Lily, who'd seen how he'd changed, hesitated. One of them, a young human named Cooper, made a split-second decision. "Check the conduits in family quarters," he ordered. "But sir, it's obviously just." "Check them now." The engineering team ran diagnostics. At first, everything looked normal. Then they dug deeper and found it, sabotage so sophisticated it was almost invisible. The conduits were set to catastrophically fail in less than 2 hours. Holy, he was right. Evacuate. Evacuate now. The evacuation happened in chaos. Families stumbled out of their quarters in pajamas, confused and frightened. Parents clutched sleepy children. Alarms screamed throughout the section. Emergency crews rushed to disable the sabotaged conduits, but they were running out of time. Kate grabbed Lily and ran. Her daughter was barely awake, confused about why they were leaving in the middle of the night. They made it to the safe zone just as the engineering team managed to vent the overloading plasma into space. The explosion they'd feared never came, but it had been close, terrifyingly close. When the immediate danger passed, Kate sat on the floor of the emergency shelter, holding Lily tight, shaking. They'd almost died. Her baby had almost been killed because Kate had dared to ask questions. But Lily wasn't thinking about the danger. She was thinking about something else entirely. She wiggled free from her mother's arms and tugged on a guard's sleeve. "I need to see Draxus. Right now." "Sweetie, it's not a good time," Kate started. "He saved us, Mom. He knew something was wrong and he saved everybody. I need to say thank you." The guard, Cooper, looked at Kate. "The commander actually wants to see you both anyway. And, yeah, the dragon's asking for her too." They walked through corridors filled with confused families and emergency personnel. Word had spread quickly. Draxus, the monster everyone feared, had detected the sabotage and raised the alarm. He'd saved lives. When they reached cell block 7, Draxus was pressed against his observation window, his glowing eyes fixed on the corridor entrance. The moment he saw Lily, his whole body relaxed. "You are safe," he rumbled through the translator. It wasn't a question, but a statement of pure relief. Lily ran to the window and pressed both hands against it. "You saved us. You're a hero. I could not let harm come to you, little one. You are." His voice caught. "You are my daughter." Kate stepped forward, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Draxus. You saved her life. You saved all of us. I would burn this entire station to ash before I let anyone hurt her," Draxus said quietly. Then he paused. "Though I suppose that is not a helpful thing to say while imprisoned for destruction." "Despite everything," Kate laughed. It was a slightly hysterical sound, but genuine. The station commander arrived with a full security detail and several very serious-looking coalition officials who'd been urgently transported to the station. The sabotage had triggered automatic alerts to coalition headquarters. They couldn't ignore an attempted mass murder at a prison facility. The investigation that followed was swift and brutal. The sabotage was too sophisticated to hide once people actually looked. They traced it back to shell companies connected to former Nexum executives. They found the payment records for the mercenary who'd planted the devices. They discovered the communications threatening Kate. And once they started digging there, they couldn't avoid digging into why Kate was being threatened in the first place. The files she'd discovered became evidence. Coalition investigators who weren't corrupt, and there were more of them than the old guard had hoped, began reviewing Draxus's original case. What they found appalled them. The trial had been a sham. Evidence had been suppressed. Witnesses had been intimidated. The entire prosecution had been funded by Nexum Mining's legal team. It took 3 months. 3 months of investigations, hearings, and political battles. During that time, Draxus's situation became something of a galactic news story. The monster who'd saved the people he was imprisoned to protect. The dragon who'd become a father to a human child. The potential victim of massive corporate injustice. Humanity, as usual, had opinions about this. Strong opinions. Human activists flooded coalition channels with demands for justice. Human lawyers volunteered to represent Draxus. Human media covered every development obsessively. Other species found this very typically human, getting emotionally invested in one individual case, demanding the entire system change, refusing to accept that's just how things are as an answer. Finally, the Coalition Review Board delivered their verdict. They couldn't grant a full pardon, the legal complexities were too tangled, and Draxus had technically violated laws even if his reasons were understandable. But they acknowledged that his imprisonment was built on false evidence and corporate corruption. They ruled that he'd served enough time for the crimes he'd actually committed. They granted conditional release. The conditions were strict. Draxus would be assigned to the custody of Dr. Kate Morrison as part of a xenocultural exchange and rehabilitation program. He'd wear a monitoring device. He'd check in regularly with coalition authorities. He'd be prohibited from leaving Earth's solar system without permission. Draxus accepted immediately. He would have accepted far harsher terms for the chance at freedom. The day he was released, news crews from 24 species crowded the station. Everyone wanted footage of this moment, the feared draconian warlord walking free after 15 years. The massive door to cell block 7 opened for the first time since Draxus had entered. Energy barriers powered down with a descending hum. Magnetic locks disengaged with heavy clanks. Draxus stood at the threshold of his cell. He was enormous in the open corridor, his wings nearly touching both walls when partially extended. Guards tensed instinctively, hands moving toward weapons. He took one step forward. Then another. Then he stopped, overwhelmed. 15 years. 15 years since he'd moved freely. 15 years since he'd felt anything but rage and despair. Lily walked up to him calmly, while guards looked ready to have heart attacks. She held out her small hand. "Come on, Dad. Let's go home." Draxus looked down at her tiny hand, then carefully, delicately, he extended one massive clawed finger. Lily wrapped her whole hand around it. Together, they walked down the corridor. A dragon and a little girl. A prisoner and his savior. A father and daughter. The transport ship that took them to Earth was specially modified to accommodate Draxus's size. He spent most of the journey staring out the viewport, watching stars he'd thought he'd never see again. Kate sat nearby, handling the endless paperwork that came with being responsible for a former galactic criminal. "We've got a house arranged," she told him. "It's in a rural area, lots of space. The government insisted on the isolation, but honestly, it'll be good. Less gawking." "I am grateful," Draxus said. "I know this will not be easy for you. The scrutiny, the fear from others, the responsibility." Kate smiled tiredly. "Yeah, well. My daughter decided your family. And I don't abandon family." Lily was curled up asleep in her seat, exhausted from the excitement. Draxus watched her with an expression that looked remarkably tender for a creature with fangs and scales. "I never thought I would have this," he said quietly. "Family again. Purpose. Hope. She gave me all of that, this tiny brave human who saw past what I was and believed in what I could be." "She's good at that," Kate agreed. "Seeing the best in people. Sometimes I worry it'll get her hurt someday. But then I think, maybe the world needs more people like her. People who choose compassion over fear." The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Earth came into view, a blue and green marble hanging in space. "Is it always so beautiful?" Draxus asked, awestruck. "Every single day," Kate said. "Welcome home, Draxus." Retry SF. Landing on Earth was harder than leaving the prison. Not physically. The transport touched down smoothly at a private government facility outside a small town in Montana. The hard part was everything that came after. Draxus stepped off the ship onto actual ground for the first time in 15 years. Real soil. Real grass. A real sky overhead instead of metal ceilings. He stood there for a solid minute, just breathing air that didn't taste recycled, feeling wind that wasn't from ventilation systems. Lily grabbed his hand, well, one of his claws, and pulled. "Come on. I want to show you everything." But there were protocols first. Medical scans to ensure he wasn't carrying any dangerous pathogens. Meetings with government officials who eyed him nervously while explaining the rules of his release. Installation of the monitoring device on his foreleg, a thick band that would track his location and vital signs constantly. Then came the media. Even though the facility was supposed to be secure, news helicopters circled overhead. Reporters camped outside the gates. Everyone wanted a statement, an interview, a photo. The story of the dragon who'd been saved by a little girl's love was too good to ignore. Kate handled it the only way she knew how, by being bluntly honest. She gave one press conference, Draxus standing beside her looking uncomfortable with the attention. Draxus made mistakes, she told the cameras. He acted violently when other options might have existed. He's not claiming to be innocent of everything. But he was also fighting to protect his people from genocide, and the legal system that convicted him was corrupt. He's paid for his crimes. Now he deserves a chance to build something better. And frankly, whether you approve or not, his family now. So would appreciate some privacy. It didn't stop the attention, but it helped. Most humans seemed cautiously supportive. Some were terrified. A few were outright hostile. There were protests outside government offices demanding Draxus be sent back to prison. There were also counter-protests demanding justice for the draconian people. The house the government provided was isolated, an old ranch property with hundreds of acres of empty land. The buildings had been reinforced to handle Draxus's size and strength. The barn had been converted into his personal space, with a massive bed, temperature controls for his draconian biology, and shelves for the few possessions he'd accumulated. That first night in the house, Lily insisted on giving him a tour like it was perfectly normal to show a 15-foot-tall dragon where the bathroom was. And this is the kitchen. Mom says she'll teach you to cook human food. And this is the living room, we can watch movies here. Do you know what movies are? And this is my room, and your room is the barn, but you can come inside whenever you want because you're family and... Lily, breathe, Kate laughed. Give him a chance to settle in. But Draxus didn't seem overwhelmed. If anything, he looked more relaxed than Kate had ever seen him. This is more than I ever imagined, he said softly. The first few weeks were an adjustment for everyone. Draxus had to relearn how to exist outside a cell. Simple things confused him: grocery stores, television, the internet. Lily delighted in teaching him everything. She showed him cartoons and laughed when he got invested in the plots. She taught him to use a tablet computer, his massive claws surprisingly delicate on the touchscreen. She introduced him to Earth food, which led to the discovery that Draxus absolutely loved strawberries. The neighbors were wary at first. The closest house was 2 miles away, but word spread quickly. A dragon was living in the Morrison house. Some people drove by slowly, gawking. A few brave souls stopped by with casseroles and questions. Mrs. Chen from the feed store was the first to really break the ice. She showed up one afternoon with a pie and a blunt attitude. "Figured you folks might want something homemade," she said, eyeing Draxus. "You really eat people." "Mrs. Chen." Kate gasped. But Draxus made a sound that might have been a chuckle. "No, madam. I am omnivorous, but I prefer my food to not be sentient." "Is that pastry?" "Apple pie." "You ever had pie?" "I have not." "Well then, today's your lucky day." They sat on the porch, Draxus carefully, the wood creaking under his weight, and shared pie. Mrs. Chen asked direct questions, and Draxus gave honest answers. By the time she left, she was inviting him to the community potluck next month. Slowly, the community started to accept him. The local kids were fascinated rather than scared. Draxus started helping out around neighboring farms. His strength made moving heavy equipment easy, and he could fix broken fences in minutes. He never asked for payment, but people started leaving thank you gifts anyway. Kate watched it all with amazement. The monster the galaxy had feared was becoming part of a small Montana community. But Draxus wasn't content to just settle into quiet life. He felt he owed a debt, to the people he'd failed to save, to his own species scattered across the galaxy as refugees, to everyone who'd suffered from the kind of corruption that had destroyed his world. He started working with Kate on something ambitious. A foundation dedicated to helping refugees and exposing corporate exploitation of vulnerable species. They called it the Veskara Foundation, named after his lost homeworld. Draxus became an advocate. He testified before coalition committees via video link, speaking about the corruption he'd experienced. He worked with lawyers to help other species facing similar situations. His story, and his willingness to speak openly about both his actions and the injustices he'd faced, made him surprisingly effective. Human rights groups loved him. Corporate interests hated him. Political cartoons started appearing showing Draxus standing protectively in front of smaller species while faceless corporations skulked away. The draconian refugees, scattered across a dozen worlds, started reaching out. They thought Draxus was dead or had forgotten them. Learning he was free and fighting for justice again gave them hope. Some began making plans to visit Earth, to reconnect with the leader they'd lost. Meanwhile, Lily was growing up with a very unusual childhood. School was interesting. The other kids had a million questions. Is your dad really a dragon? Can he breathe fire? Is it scary living with him? Lily answered patiently, fiercely defensive of her family. There was one incident, about 6 months after they'd arrived on Earth. A bully named Travis started making fun of Lily, calling her dad a monster, saying mean things about aliens. Lily tried to ignore it, but Travis pushed harder. So she invited him over after school. Travis showed up trying to act tough, but Kate could see he was nervous. Then Draxus emerged from the barn, and Travis went pale. "You must be Travis," Draxus said calmly. "Lily tells me you have concerns about my presence on Earth." Travis looked ready to run. "It's okay to be afraid," Draxus continued, lowering himself to be less intimidating. "Fear is natural when facing the unknown. But let me ask you something, have I harmed anyone since arriving here?" "And no," Travis stammered. "Have I threatened anyone?" "No. Then perhaps your fear is based not on what I am doing, but on what you assume I might do. That is called prejudice, young human. It is something I experienced myself, and it led to tragedy." Draxus paused. "I would like to tell you my story, if you are willing to listen. Not to excuse what I have done, but to help you understand that beings are more complex than their appearance suggests." Travis stayed for 2 hours. He left thoughtful and quiet. The bullying stopped. In fact, Travis became one of Lily's closest friends. Years passed. Lily grew from a little girl into a teenager, then a young woman. She excelled in school, particularly in xenocultural studies and diplomacy. Having grown up between two worlds, she understood both human and alien perspectives in ways few others could. She attended university on a full scholarship, studying interspecies relations. Her thesis was about breaking down prejudice through personal connection, using her own experience with Draxus as the central case study. The Draconian community, meanwhile, was thriving in their new worlds. With Draxus's advocacy and human support, they gained better protections and resources. Their population was growing again. Their culture was being preserved. When Lily was 22, something remarkable happened. The Draconian Council officially requested that the coalition establish formal diplomatic relations. And they specifically requested that a human representative be involved in the negotiations, someone who understood both species. They requested Lily Morrison. She was young for such a position. Unprecedentedly young. But her qualifications were undeniable. She'd grown up bridging two worlds. She spoke fluent Draconian. She had the trust of both communities. The coalition agreed.